Okay, so, so we're back and we've got our body, and the next step is obviously we talked about routing out these other cavities for the pockets, neck pocket, humbucker cavity, trim, and I have the second template that we're going to use to do it. I've already affixed the spec tape on there. So I should say these templates, I made these templates out of 1/4 inch plexi off an actual guitar. So I basically attached this stuff to a guitar that was totally broken down, used a bearing guide bit to trace, basically cut down the plexi exactly to the form of the body, as well as the exact position and shape of all the cavities. So this is really accurate to what, you know, was on that guitar back in the day. I mean, if you really look at, let's say, the trem route. Now, what's interesting about all this, and I'm not by any stretch of the imagination any kind of expert about what was going on at the Kramer factory. I can just tell you what I can deduce by having owned some of their guitars and also having listened to some interviews with that, let's say, like I was talking before, that Johnny Bean had done with Paul Unkert, who worked at the factory and actually is responsible for this design. So what I was going to say is that from Unkert, these bodies were originally full strat-shaped bodies, right? They didn't have these sort of like sleeker horns and this bigger cut here. They were, you know, really copies of Stratocasters, and they got a cease and desist, is what I was told. And they had to go ahead and modify them, and I guess these were made at a company called Sports in Connecticut, which made decoys and things like that, he said. And he brought some bodies with him, and they just basically, you know, worked him on a drum sander, worked him down until he got a shape that he was happy with, and that was the Pacer shape now. I can also say that in terms of, like, you know, the accuracy of the trem cuts and everything, not only were they set up for being, you know, original Stratocaster shapes, they were also set up for non-locking tremolos, right? They were using Fender style non-locking trems on the guitar at first, and when the Floyd Roses came in, they actually had to modify all of the existing trem pockets to accept the Floyd Rose, as it had a slightly different footprint and required a larger opening here where the sustain block would be to accommodate the nut for the bar itself. So this area here had to be opened up, as well as it had to be opened up for a larger block and a longer dive. Now, the guitars I have have obviously been modified. Some of them, well, I shouldn't say some of them. They all were pretty much modified until, you know, later on in the 80s. But the B serial number body, the trim route itself is bizarre in that it really looks like it was modified. The secondary cut, you can tell, was cut into there. The paint is missing in the cavity from where it was routed, and the enlargement doesn't go all the way through the body. So what you'll find out, and I'll show you on this later, is when you do this route here, you end up with a ledge under this, which is, you know, something that they never had. Also, there's kind of an odd little machine mark here from where this was opened up, I guess, on the original body as well. So this is not exactly a straight line either. It kind of comes down and then goes out a little bit and then down. I think that was a result of them placing some sort of a jig there that didn't quite line up perfectly with what was originally there in terms of the cavity. So that's interesting about these trim routes, that they were really kind of odd looking. The other thing is the humbucker routes here are oval in shape, kind of, around the edges, and they're not symmetrical. Like, I've done a tracing and then flipped it over and tracing, and they don't match. So this shape here I'm not exactly sure how they came up with it, but there was handwork in there. It wasn't done by, you know, well, obviously they didn't have that kind of stuff. They didn't have CNC machines at the Kramer factory, as far as I know. I think Unkert explained that that the place was like medieval, that they had, you know, rudimentary woodworking tools, chisels, hammers, you know, a couple of routers. Just, you know, they weren't doing a lot of the woodworking there, but they were doing the assembly work, so machinery wasn't available, I guess, to them. So Unkert was doing the best with what he had available today. So a lot of these cavities are bizarre. in terms of fit and finish. And I like that, so I keep it that way. So that's what we got. So now we're going to go ahead and attach this body, or rather, excuse me, this template to the body, and it goes on the back. So we got to remove this one. And I usually use a little guy here to sort of pry under there, and I'll put it in the area where the where the arm contour is going to be. So if I scratch up the wood a bit, it really doesn't matter because that's all getting worked away anyway. So now we've got to remove all the tape here and all that, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. But once you get one off, you can kind of use the tape to get the rest of them off, and it goes a lot faster. So there's another little kind of tip for you. You don't have to wear out your fingernails peeling all this stuff up. Just keep using your tape to lift up each successive piece, and it comes off, and you got yourself a nice ball that you can roll up and throw on the floor, and that'll get stuck to your shoe later, and you'll be wondering why you're going 130 down the parkway. It's because you got a piece of tape stuck. All right, so anyway, we got that off. And I guess I wanted to show you a little trick about how to get this all lined up correctly while you've got the tape on it. Because obviously, once the tape is peeled and it's sticky, you're not going to be able to slide it around. So what I do is I've cut, and this is something like cabinet guys do for laying out laminates on top of cabinet tops, is they have little kind of like, I've got these cut out of like a cardboard box, little thin strips of cardboard. And what I do is I just basically place them in between the tape strips around the body, as so. And this will line up to where you want it to get a little bit of room between the body and the tape, right? So we're going to put all these down here. And you don't have to get it between every single one of them because, it's going to float regardless. You just want to get them in a good spot. So that looks pretty good. We'll put one more there, I think, in between, right about here. So now at this point, we're going to go, and I'm going to go over here and get a razor blade. The razor blade's something like a box cutter blade, is good for removing or backing of the tape quickly and without destroying your thumbnail. So this was shown to me obviously by somebody who had done this too much, re-gripping clubs. After a while, any little repetitive sort of friction will result in injury. So it kind of, let the blade here take all the brunt of the work, and you just kind of stick the end of the blade into the tape, and it'll just kind of peel up the backing pretty quickly. Okay, so we're almost through all the tape here. All right, so there we've got all of our backings off, and now we're just going to go ahead and set it down on the body. And as you can see, I could still move it around, right? So I'm going to put on my glasses so I can see what the hell I'm doing. And I'm going to get it lined up with the perimeter, right? Front to back, side to side. And when I feel, using my hands, that I've got the template in a very good position, I'll go ahead and remove one of these and slightly apply pressure as I'm taking them out, and double check again everything's still good. Pull out the next one, pull out the next one, pull out the next one, pull out this one, pull out that one, and pull out the last one. Now we can press it down firmly to the body so it adheres nicely. And as you can see, now we've got it all lined up, and there was no grief with having to pull it off and put it down, pull it off and pull it down. That way it doesn't really work very well. Okay, so we've got our template on now, and we'll see you over at the pin router again.